Hello everyone and welcome. Today we are honored to host Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary Ms. Dziunik Aghajanian. Ms. Aghajanian, thank you for accepting our invitation and for joining us today.
Thank you for the invitation. It's my pleasure.
Ms. Aghajanian, Armenia and Azerbaijan recently pre-signed a peace agreement in Washington. Prime Minister Pashinyan states that it's beneficial for all countries in the region, while the Trump route may create opportunities for Azerbaijan, the US, and according to some, even Israel. What's the real benefit for Armenia?
Well, in reality, the initial document is about the so-called normalization of relations between Armenia and Azerbaijan. However, the declaration signed between the Armenian Prime Minister and President of Azerbaijan with witnessing of President Trump is about the possibilities of opening the so-called Trump route and certain elements which I hope we will discuss in detail. In a nutshell, we can state that there is nothing beneficial in both documents for Armenia. First, because it's the concessions made by the government of Armenia according to the demands of Azerbaijan, and it is simply registered in those documents. Concessions that have been pronounced a long time ago, several months ago, we heard about several of them. In addition to that, we heard President Trump stating about the possibility of a 99-year lease of Armenian territory, which is unprecedented and unlawful according to our constitution, and it grants the possibility to a third party to bring another party for security provision and actually exploitation of Armenian territory. And this is very similar to what we have had in Hong Kong for a very long time ago. So 99-year lease is simply giving another country the possibility to control your own territory for certain purposes, and certain purposes except for the expected economic benefits which the Prime Minister states, has no other benefits for us except for creating additional risks and threats for the state of Armenia.
The meeting's declaration mentions opening a route between Azerbaijan and Nakhichevan, with Armenia and the US seeking for a third party to control it. Meanwhile, the November 9, 2020 declaration stated that Armenia would ensure the route's security and Russia would control it. How can two documents on the same issue contain such contradictory provisions?
Well, of course it's contradictory, because November 9 document did not question the belonging of the expected route to Armenian territory and the legislation under which it would operate. However, this particular document states that it will be controlled by the US, and the management of it will be given to other contracted parties. So, as I stated, it is like a colonialization of a certain part of Armenia, making Armenia dependent on the wishes and wills of third parties, be it the US or other Western companies that will be operating in that particular area, and most importantly Azerbaijan and Turkey, which would definitely benefit from this particular operation. If in addition it states about opening of communication among the states in the region, however, I don't believe either Azerbaijan or Turkey going that route, because that would definitely mean strengthening of Armenia, which they have been working for decades to bring to its knees and make it as dependent to its wishes as possible. So I don't think, given also the past history of our relationship with Azerbaijan and Turkey, that these two documents would work and bring any effectual positive outcome to Armenia.
By involving non-regional forces to control the route, are we turning the region into an arena of potential military conflict, possibly even risking the Ukrainian scenario in Armenia? By the way, let us note that both Iran and Russia have expressed concerns.
Well, of course, Iran and Russia would express concern because it creates existential risks for both of the countries, but it also creates existential risk for Armenia, also for Azerbaijan, because they are being used as platform for the coming military actions against Iran. The whole plan was perpetrated by the Western powers in order to gain control over the whole of South Caucasus and create a buffer zone against Russia's interests, and also use it for a deconstruction of both countries, Russia and Iran, gaining control over the Caspian resources and then going beyond to Central Asia, in a way creating hotspots all around the Russian southern borders. And we see at different times different escalations along that particular area. So these efforts are aimed at keeping Russia, China, and Iran at control. As I said, deconstructing those countries, gaining control over the northern parts of Iran, which is and the southern part of Caspian, which is the oil and gas-rich areas, and also becoming the main teller in the region, with the sole purpose of saying who would go from north to south and from east to west. So in a way, this is hegemonic power trying to bring its resources in a region, turning it into a battleground between all these powers, and eventually also, given the Israeli attempts and Israeli involvement in Azerbaijan, also turning it into an anti-Iranian battleground, which would definitely involve Armenia, as this particular narrow route, which is now called Trump route, is supposed to be used as the one that will help supply military equipment and personnel for the upcoming events.
Let us also talk that there is no mention of Artsakh Armenians' rights to return to their homeland. Is this an omission by the Armenian government or a deliberate Azerbaijani demand to close the issue? Let us also note that the agreement includes dissolving the Minsk group.
Well, let's call the declaration that was signed satisfaction to Azerbaijani demands. As I mentioned, the agreement from the Armenian government, as you mentioned, it's a deliberate omission. It couldn't have been there because the Armenian government, in the face of the prime minister, has promised Azerbaijan the dissolution of the Minsk group and its structures, as well as giving the possibility for the connection to Azerbaijan, and also withdrawing all international claims from different bodies that are currently in process. So it is no surprise there is no mentioning of any Artsakhi issue, and Azerbaijan was pursuing it, and the declaration includes Section 907 reference and the denouncement of the promise of the Trump administration to denounce it, because Azerbaijan does not want any decision, any resolution, any reference to Nagorno-Karabakh conflict and its roots. As you might recall, Section 907 was adopted as a result of the aggression of Azerbaijan against Armenians in Nagorno-Karabakh and Armenia, and it was condemnation of those acts. So in an effort to delete from history, all reference to its actions and its aggressive manner of its behavior for the last 30 years, Azerbaijan got the promise from the Trump administration to have Section 907 denounced. In that sense, I would just call on our diaspora representatives to work very hard not to allow that to happen, because this has to pass through Congress, and the Armenian lobby has a lot of resources to keep its pressure over the Congress people and not to allow the denouncement of this Section 907, because this is the possibility of pressurizing over Azerbaijan for the release of all POWs and hostages, and also for the not only criticism but also possible further actions in addressing the destruction of Armenian cultural heritage in Azerbaijan.
There's no mention in the agreement of Armenian captives and Artsak's political leadership held in Baku's prisons. In one video, Trump raises the question, but Pashinyan appears to persuade him not to include it in the agreement. Is this an appropriate stance for a head of government?
No, and it comes as no surprise because, regretfully, the person holding the prime minister position in our government is working not for the Armenian agenda but for Azeri and Turkish agenda. And it's not the first year that we witness such steps and efforts being undertaken. For Trump, it's important to have something to show to the Armenian community in the US, to use it for the upcoming elections, midterm elections there. And for our prime minister, though he would like to get some of our POWs back so that he can showcase it for the upcoming elections in Armenia, but he definitely wouldn't want the Artsakhi leadership to be coming back because he considers them as a threat to his rule and to his possibility of being re-elected in the country, and also because they held the information that would reveal all the secrecy and the enmity of his actions that brought to the ethnic cleansing in Artsakh and to the total depopulation of our 1,000-old piece of homeland. So this is something that he would try to avoid as much as possible, especially in the pre-election period. So it comes as no surprise that first he's taken as a surprise when the President Trump brings up the issue, but also I think if it comes to action, he would prefer it to be done in the sense of the POWs that are already sentenced in Azerbaijan, and definitely not for the Armenian leadership of Artsakh.
The agreement makes no mention of Armenian territories occupied by Azerbaijan, nor of removing Azerbaijani military forces from occupied lands such as Sevlich and Ishkhanasar. Even representatives of the ruling party acknowledge that more than 200 square kilometers are occupied. How can peace agreement be pre-signed without addressing these issues?
Well, this is not a peace agreement. Let's be clear about that. This is something that usually in diplomatic scene we would call it establishment of diplomatic relations and normalizations of relations between the countries, that in the title, though it has the reference of the word peace, but it has nothing to do with any peace agreement. Because if you compare it to peace agreements that are, available on the web, you can see that there are multi-page documents that go into every single detail and bring up every single mechanism that would be used in order to work the disagreements between the parties, to solve the issues, to address all outstanding issues. This has nothing to do with that. This is just a piece of paper that is initialized for the purpose of the Prime Minister to use for his election purposes. So let's be clear on that. And it's no surprise that there is no mentioning of the return of Armenian territories, because they hope that in the delineation and the demarcation processes, they would be able to bring back some of the territories and use for showcasing that they have done something positive for Armenia. But given the Azerbaijani stance, I don't think this is coming. And let's not forget, this is initial document, so it is not supposed to be in process and in effect right now. It means that until the signing and ratification of this document and becoming it part of the internal legislation of the countries, which is something that I don't think we would see ever happening, given the Azerbaijani ultimate goals and purposes, we would not see any positive attitude towards, even for the confidence building measure of returning any of the Armenian territories back. Moreover, President Aliyev has stated on multiple occasions that wherever their soldiers stand, it's their territory. And also, let's not forget about claims of the so-called Western Armenia that is still held there, and they are trying to push it as much as possible in international agenda.
Ms. Aghajanian, as you already mentioned, we did not appoint. We are withdrawing all legal lawsuits and all legal claims and stopping all lawsuits in international courts, including cases in the Hague International Court. How can such claims be withdrawn when we joined Rome Statute to hold Azerbaijan accountable?
Well, I think the argument was brought by the ruling people in order to appease the criticism in the public about joining the Rome Statute, and they told that they would initiate a legal case against President Aliyev and his administration for the aggression against Artsakh and the crimes against humanity committed by his government. But as we see, it never happened. So as I mentioned a long time ago then, this is just simply to go along with the demands coming from the European Union and the US for putting President Putin in a very difficult situation and not allowing him to travel to Armenia. So it was aimed at cutting the ties between Armenia and Russia and making our relationship with our strategic partner even harder. So in this case, as I said, this is initial document, and it envisages withdrawal of the cases after the ratification or after the signing of the actual document. But given the fact that the new cases have not been instigated and it is even harder for our lawyers to work in international arena given the Armenian government stance on the issue, that they have promised already to Azerbaijani president, and they are enforcing over our lawyers and other people not to go forward with additional claims, it means that we will see hard time in this case. But the clause refers to non-discrimination, apparently it shouldn't have any anti-Armenian rhetoric, something we have seen in Azerbaijani Republic being instigated even from the kindergarten in the children and the schools. So I would love to see whether Azerbaijani government makes any steps forward in order to stop its anti-Armenian rhetoric, to stop the destruction of Armenian heritage, to stop its aggressive rhetoric that we see on everyday cases. And I would love to see whether there is an honest desire from their side to come up with any kind of confidence building measure and any kind of peace-minded action that any normal human being would love to see. I don't think that is going to happen. Even worse, we're going to see more and more pressure over our government to make them agree to some kind of a return of the so-called Azerbaijani refugees, which have no legal right to do so because they left Armenia long before the dissolution of the Soviet Union. And most of them have sold their property or exchanged their property before they left the country, and they chose a different residence for them in Azerbaijan. So legally they have no right to return. They left the country peacefully, and by doing so they renounced any possibility of demand towards any rights in Armenia. So forcing any kind of demand for them to return is just an artificial claim simply to achieve some kind of demographic change in Armenia and to make it as difficult for Armenians to pursue their national goals as possible.
By the way, the Hague International Court recognized Azerbaijan's actions as genocide. So with this, we are also stopping.
Azerbaijani actions long before they started their aggressive war in 2020, at the time and after that, especially the blockade and the ethnic cleansing, goes along the Genocide Convention and falls fully into the articles that define it as genocide. So a lot of people think that if some people were not killed there, it's not genocide, but ethnic cleansing in whatever manner it is done, especially in an area which is an ancestral homeland for Armenians, and which has created conditions that did not allow Armenians to live there, and in this case was under the threat of life. It falls fully under the conditions of the Convention of Genocide, so it is rightfully mentioned as genocide.
And the last question, what will be the status of this route? Will Armenians be allowed to use it, and what guarantees exist that military cargo will not pass through it?
Well, first, military cargo will pass through it. Whether of course Armenians will use it. I don't know the conditions, but judging from whatever has been announced, I would love to see the document that states every condition under which it will operate, who would become the actual manager of the route, what kind of agencies will be providing the security alongside the route. And according to my understanding, there will be security organizations, private security organizations that the US uses very frequently in different conflict zones. And it would, in a nutshell, mean Western military force being located and placed in a junction point between Armenia and Iran on the Armenian-Iranian border. So having any kind of Western military presence on the Iranian border, any normal person who looks at the map would understand that it is totally unacceptable for Iran, and it is a direct threat to security in our region overall. It also threatens Russia's interests, and in this case, it makes Armenia the cross point for all these great power games, which will turn in near future, given the Israeli presence in our region and in Azerbaijan especially, and their actions in the latest developments against Iran, that we would see definitely activated military actions against Iran, and in that, regretfully, Armenia's territory will be used for supply of military equipment and military personnel. This is really regrettable because it will blow up the region.
Thank you very much for the interview.
Thank you.
Let us remind you that my guest today was Ambassador Dziunik Aghajanian.